Hey everyone, welcome in to another daily editorial here on the KE Report. In this daily editorial, I am introducing a new company to the show. However, I know a few of you have been following along with this story. The company is Rackla Metals, traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol RAK. Now, Rackla Metals focused in the Tombstone Gold Belt. The company has projects in Northwest Territories and Yukon. The focus going to be at the flagship Astro project, but the company is still going to be advancing a handful of other projects, again, in Yukon and Northwest Territories. I am chatting with the VP of Exploration, Scott Castleman. Now, Scott, since this is the first time on the show, I always like to start with the properties that the company holds. Again, a focus in the Tombstone Gold Belt. Let's start off with the strategy of focusing in this gold belt. What drew you to this area?
Well, what drew us to the area, the Yukon and Northwest Territories, and the belt in particular, is the number of resources and operating mines from Alaska through Yukon and into the western part of the Northwest Territories, and recent discoveries that have been made, particularly on the eastern part of the belt where we are, by Snowline Gold Corp at their Valley occurrence on their Rogue property.
So then when it comes to the flagship project, let's start there. The Astro project. There was a little bit of limited work done by Newmont in a JV a few years ago, starting in about 2017. Can you take us through the history of this asset?
Yeah, so Astro, as you mentioned, was worked in 2017. At the time, Newmont's focus in the area was for Carlin-style gold occurrences, and that's because of a discovery on the Yukon side of the border by Attack Resources in around the period of 2010-11. So Newmont, of course, being very familiar with the Carlin-style deposits from their mines in Nevada, was looking at the same host rocks as they swing from the Yukon down into the Northwest Territories, and they focused their exploration program there, which was very early stage grassroots. There hadn't been much work done on that area of the Northwest Territories. So they did all of the early stage work, leg surveys, soil sample surveys, stream sediment sampling, followed that up with some prospecting, did some geophysics, a little bit of trenching, and a small amount of drilling, just over 1,100 meters in 11 holes. But all of that work was focused in the sedimentary rocks, which would be the host for a Carlin-style deposit. And there's shales in that particular part of the Northwest Territories. Just to the west of where all their work was is a large Cretaceous age intrusion, one of the Tombstone Suite intrusions. And those intrusions are the ones that host the mineralization in the Yukon and Alaska at places like the Fort Knox gold mine, the Brewery Creek past producing gold mine, and the currently operating Eagle gold mine in Victoria Gold. Those are all in Cretaceous intrusions that form the belt. So the work that Newmont did came basically right up to the border or the contact of that intrusion, didn't go into the intrusion. And that left an opportunity for others to try to figure out where to go with this project.
Now, I do have to ask, because I read through the presentation. Newmont, they're drilling. They actually did get a drill on the ground. They drilled 11 holes in just over 1,100 meters. Why did they turn away from that drilling so quickly?
The results that they were getting in their target rock type, in the sedimentary rocks, were somewhat anomalous, but they didn't show the elements of a Carlin-style mineralizing system. So that was the first thing to deter them. Their plan was to focus on the sediments, and when they intercepted in a couple of the holes deeper down, they did intercept the intrusive Cretaceous intrusions, and that at the time was viewed as shutdown rock for them. So a couple of holes got a few tens of meters into that rock, and they did actually return some interesting gold values. They had one intercept of 20 meters of 0.67 grams per ton gold in the intrusion. But I guess that wasn't what they were after, and so they decided not to pursue it any further.
So then what are you and your team going to do here at the Astro project? Where do you start with exploration, and do you think you could be drilling this year?
We'll definitely be drilling this year. What we have done is taken all of that historic data and compiled it, looked at the geochemistry, particularly what focused us in on the intrusion as being the place to look was the chemical association of the gold with other elements in stream sediment samples, in soil samples, and even in rock samples and drill core. And what we were seeing is that association, the gold correlates very well with the elements bismuth, tellurium, tungsten, tin, arsenic, and antimony. And that chemical suite is characteristic of the reduced intrusion-related gold system that forms these intrusive deposits in the Tombstone Gold Belt.
So, talk to me about drilling then. What are the drill plans? Do you have drill plans? When do you think we could see some drill plans?
Yeah, so our plans now go from here until the season begins. We're still compiling those results. We're lining up all contractors that we're going to be using this year. We got airborne geophysics planned. We're getting a big geological crew together. We're receiving drill bids right now. We hope to announce a drill contractor in about 2 weeks. That part of the north is generally open for exploration early June. We're going to hit the ground running with establishing a new camp on the property and then getting out and expanding the work that Newmont did westward into the intrusive rocks on Astro. So we'll be doing stream sediment sampling, soil sampling, rock sampling, and mapping. And one of the key things about this target is that they're vein sets. It's not like a stockwork, it's more of a parallel vein set. And what we want to particularly be able to do in order to be successful is orient our drilling so we're going across all of these structural features. So the mapping early on will be important. And we're planning to have the drill arrive later in June, and we'll be drilling definitely by July.
Okay, thank you for that update. So that's the Astro project. Let's then talk about some of the projects in Yukon, the HIT project and the SUR properties. These are combined within the company's corporate presentation. What's the work plans and even the history on these assets?
So HIT and SUR are immediately adjacent to Astro, but they're on the Yukon side of the border. The work history on those is much less than at Astro. They've had a little bit of grassroots work done, stream sed sampling, minor amount of rigid spur soil sampling, and some prospecting. There were 2 very short holes drilled on a skarn type target on the HIT, on the margins of an intrusion there. There's another one of these Cretaceous intrusions on the HIT property. There's a third one south on the SUR. They haven't fully been evaluated for their reduced intrusion-related gold potential. So we'll expand on that grassroots work with more stream sed sampling, soil sampling, prospecting, mapping, and there's a chance if we can drum up a target there that we'll pop a few holes into one or both of those intrusive centers on the HIT and SUR. An interesting thing about these intrusion-related gold targets is the intrusion is recognized generally as a magnetic low. It's reduced, so it's not very magnetic. When they intrude the rocks, in this case it's sedimentary rocks, they often have an alteration margin around them, which can be quite gaussous. And as a prospector, it stands out. Your eyes are focused there. You go in and you try to collect samples and find out what's going on. And it can draw people's attention away from what the real important thing about these deposits are, which is the inside of the intrusion where the sheeted quartz veining occurs.
Okay, let's also talk about the Josh claims then. Those are in Northwest Territories. History and work plans here then, please.
Yep. So along with the acquisitions that we made on those 3 properties previously mentioned, we did some claim staking on Josh. And what drew our attention there is a VTEM survey that was flown on spec many years back. It did MAG and EM survey, and it identified a couple of resistivity lows on the Josh, which were not mapping there previously, did not find any intrusive centers, but these resistivity lows really stand out. And when looking at the similar geophysical survey on Snowline's Road property, they have very similar resistivity response on their Valley and Gracie targets. The size is the same, the resistivity level is the same. So it was an interesting target. We did manage to get out and spend a day or so on the claims last year, and we want to do a lot more work this year, again, with the full suite of grassroots type exploration techniques, stream sediment sampling, soil sampling, and prospecting.
So just a quick question regarding drilling at any of these projects. What do the costs look like when you do get a drill up there? Can you give us ballpark numbers, please?
Yeah, we're hoping to actually be drilling for around about $100 a meter. It could be a little bit higher than that. That would be the actual drill costs. All in costs, once you include the accommodations, analyses, and all those factors, it's probably going to be between $300 and $500 a meter.
Okay, that's not the higher numbers that we sometimes hear out of some companies working up north. Let's talk some other company fundamentals. Share structure, little over 58 million shares outstanding on a fully diluted basis, a little more than 67 million. I'm seeing insiders at 30%, close associates at 25%. Who are some of the key stakeholders or well-known names that we could know?
Well, our CEO is Simon Ridgway. Some of your listeners may know him. He's been involved with the Gold Group management for many years, and Rackla since he was founding member of Rackla. Crescat Capital recently invested in our most recent financing to get this project underway.
Okay, let's get into the team then. You mentioned Simon Ridgway. He's been on this show talking about volcanic gold mines quite a bit last year. You also have the president and also a director, Bruce Smith. So he is connected with Radius Gold. Give us a little background on yourself then, Scott, and touch on anybody else on the team, please.
Yeah, so I have been in exploration or the mining industry one way or another for about 37 years, I think now. The most recently, I was with the Yukon Geological Survey as the head of minerals geology based in Whitehorse. And in that role, would visit exploration projects throughout the Yukon. So I've seen a lot of this type of deposit. Been to Victoria Gold's Eagle Gold Mine, Banyan Gold's Ormac Project, Sitka Gold's RC Project, and Snowlines Project. So I'm very familiar with this style of deposit. And when Simon presented this opportunity to me, I got very excited. Another member of our team is Doug Murray, who's a geologist, been working with the group for many, many years. He spent a few days on the project in the Yukon and Northwest Territories last year, and will be up for the full season this year.
All right, cash in the bank, that's always important to talk about. The company recently raised some money back in December, an oversubscribed private placement that brought in about $3.4 million. Where does the company stand in terms of cash, and do you have a general idea on the budget this year?
Yeah, we're at 4.2 million in the bank total with that fundraising. Budget this year will be, we're also looking at acquiring a few other projects. We're talking to, I think, 5 different groups on similar targets in and around our project area. So depending on what happens there, we'll be spending between 3.5 and 4 million on Astro, the other projects we talked about, and anything else that we acquire in that time.
Okay, so you are still looking at growing the land package and the project portfolio in and around that area. Wrap us up then, Scott, with just a simple breakdown of what investors can expect in terms of news flow in the near term.
In the near term, we'll be announcing contracts for drillers, airborne geophysical contractor, camp management facilities, and then beyond that, we'll be gearing up for mobilization to the field. That'll happen around about mid-May. And in June, starting in June, we'll be hitting the ground with our sampling programs. So we'll be announcing those results later in June as that work progresses. And then late June, early July, the drill should be on the ground. We're going to be drilling about 3,000 meters in the first phase, and that'll be in approximately 15 holes, give or take. And then beyond that, hopefully the sample analyses will be coming in later in June and July. Fingers crossed if the labs can keep up, and then it'll just keep flowing from there.
Okay, Scott, thank you very much for this company introduction. If anybody has any follow-up questions on Rackla Metals, please email me. I'll get those addressed for you and also follow up when we see some more news out of the company. Scott, thank you again for your time. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you very much, Corey.